In psychology, we talk about this all the time. When you feel a certain emotion, when you feel down, it constricts your thoughts, as in
Hmm.
it makes your thoughts narrow more, and it's hard to think of anything good because you feel that way, and you kind of like it's kind of like a cage, and it kind of closes in on certain thoughts. So the way that if you that's the great thing about gratitude and writing it down on a piece of paper and writing it down on something,
Hmm.
because you wrote it down, you can always look back at it, and that thoughts are not restricted, so you can always look back at that, and it can
Yeah.
boost you up.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Experience Podcast. My name is Tejasva or Tex, and together, you and I are going to have amazing conversations with amazing people and learn so much through our experiences. This is a listener supported podcast, so any level of Patreon subscription or one time donation will be accepted with a lot of gratitude and used back to making this podcast experience even greater. In today's episode, I can't wait to welcome Wakeel. We're going to be talking about psychology and spirituality and how they might come together. But first, let's take a deep breath and close our eyes and reflect on the word gratitude. Maybe it's a feeling, a memory, a person, an environment, or whatever else may come to mind. And whenever you're ready, you may open your eyes. Keep this thought in mind, maybe write it down on a piece of paper, because we will come back to it later in the episode. If you're comfortable, we'd love to know what you thought of, so please do share with us in the comments below or feel free to message us. Let's begin. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first episode of the Experience Podcast. I'm super excited to have Wakeel as our first guest. Wakeel is a psychology student from the University of Birmingham. He's also called the Wellbeing Scientist and is an influencer on TikTok. I promise he doesn't dance, but he will make your thoughts dance with all the content that he shares, some very valuable advice, and some great food for thought as well. So, Wakeel, how are you doing?
I'm doing what? That's still a sick intro.
Thank you very much. Came up with it on the spot.
I see these podcasts all the time. I really like those intros. I never
Yeah.
thought I would have those intros myself. So thank you for letting me be on this podcast and let me enjoy this
No,
experience.
Wakil, pleasure is mine, and I think you're a really great speaker, and you have some amazing things to share. So, Wakil, what are you doing these days? What have you been up to?
Well, these days I've been working on my psychology project. So
Hmm.
in psychology, you have lots of tips and tricks like gratitude journals, stress management, mindfulness. You have all these tips, and where those originate from is studies from average people. And I mean,
Hmm.
average is like common people just like me and you.
Hmm.
And I was looking at these studies and I was thinking, why is it always with average people? Why is it just the people that, have normal lives just like us? Why don't we look at people that are different? Like they have, like they're more practiced in those areas. Like I'm always looking for like the niche markets in psychology. So that's how I came up with the idea. What if I look at the monks? Because they practice like these ideas of gratitude, stress management, mindfulness, so much more than we have ever have. So maybe there
Hmm.
may be something there that no one has ever researched before and that can really tell us something about the mind. Because that's what psychology in essence really is, just what is the
Right.
mind really about?
Yeah, of course. And actually, I was going to ask you, for the general people, I mean, we've heard the word psychology so much here and there, but what exactly is psychology, and what exactly does a psychologist do?
Well, it depends on who you ask, but for me, psychology is just trying to understand your mind. And that's
Hmm.
what the subjects arise from. Like a person that originally arose from, I think, a guy that he did his own introspection in the early days of psychology. There was people just, there wasn't standardized experiments like we do right now.
Hmm.
So having loads of people and doing these behavior tests and everything like that. Before it was more just introspection, like a guy just sitting down and he's just seeing how his own mind reacts to certain things. And
That's
that's how it
interesting.
really originated from. Like someone just trying to understand what is their mind about, and what is like
Mm-hmm.
these action responses, like what's happening here. And that's kind of what psychology is. And for a psychologist, it really depends on which psychologist you talk about, because there's so many different areas. There's like researcher psychologists, there's practical psychologists. So the area I want to go into is practical psychology, so clinical
Mm-hmm.
psychology. And what they really do is they, again, with them, their roles vary a lot, but in essence, they're trying to break down people's negative patterns with people in clinical populations. So people that's experiencing extreme depression, high
Mm-hmm.
levels of anxiety, PTSD,
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. So you really want to get out there and use your psychology powers to understand people more and really try and help the world is what you're trying to do. Is that right, Wakil?
Yeah,
I think that's an amazing purpose to
it's
have.
funny that you say
And
psychology powers, because the minute I came into my psychology course, the first thing that they taught me is, we're going to teach you this stuff, but remember, this is not a magic wand. Like, you still need to practice this, you need to still learn more, and sometimes it may not work. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's just one of those.
Wow. Yeah. Do you think studying psychology has helped you personally develop in life as well?
I think so. I I would psychology, when I say it's given me a deeper understanding of my own mind when I'm studying psychology. So
Mm,
the modules I have right now is understanding like the neurons in my brain, the learning and behaviors, and different areas of those. And I feel like it not only made me understand my habits more, appreciate my habits, but also it kind of made me make more controlled responses. Because
mm,
now because you're studying, I'm in lectures all day and they're telling me, okay, this is what your mind does, this is what happens, and this is like the natural response you go to. And when you're always hearing those kind of things, it kind of sometimes zooms you out a bit,
yeah.
because now you're thinking, okay, I know I've been taught so many times they're doing this, the mind's doing this. Okay,
Hmm.
what do I want to do now? So I think
Wow.
it has helped me in that retrospect. And it's not for everyone, by the way, because
Yeah.
you talk to another psychology student, some of them will say something completely different.
Yeah. No, I'm sure. I think, the moment it's interesting because when we're kids and we think we want to study a certain subject and we're really passionate about it, we do a lot of research in our own time and we really enjoy it. But we take it up as a degree and all of a sudden it all comes crashing down because now something happens to us, or maybe it's the environment, maybe it's the pressure, maybe it's the academic grade side of thing that make us, not enjoy it as much anymore. So I'm completely with you on that, as in every person will have a different take on it. But I'm very happy that you've been able to take this in and apply it to your own life as well. And what I find really interesting, Wakil, is something you mentioned about gratitude. You said you're trying to research how gratitude helps people who have a lot of practice with gratitude, for example, monks. So, can you tell us a little bit, if this is not classified information, can you tell us a little bit about how you're doing these experiments? Are you talking to multiple monks? Are you taking them to some machines and measuring stuff from their brain? What's it like?
Well, right now I'm still on project design, so I'm having different ideas of. So first, I'm going to start off with some basic interviews, then
Mm-hmm.
go out to like some, maybe this thing's called EEG machines, where it just like
Yep.
looks at your brain activations in your head. So I'm trying to, right now I'm not in the experimental phase, but I'm on the designing phase and just looking at, because before you do an experiment, you need to tell the tutors, you need to tell the instructors, why is it a good reason to do this experiment? What they want
Yeah.
you to do. So I'm finding those things out, and just saying it right now, the reason I really wanted to do it, especially on gratitude, because I believe in it so much,
Mm-hmm.
but I feel I don't agree with some of the things that's out there in the articles right now. For example, some of them say, um, with gratitude, it's best to just do a journal once a week. Like that's the maximum. Like gratitude boosts your happiness scores, and they go
Sure.
that if you want to get the best happiness score increase from gratitude journals, just do it once a week. And I didn't really
Okay.
agree with that, because I really agree with practice makes perfect. Practice more, you'll get more. And that's what I
Mm.
really want to do on people that have practiced so much. And I want to see how it affects them. Because those articles that said, oh, it works only for 1 week. It's best just to do it 1 week. We're doing on average people that never did gratitude in their life.
Hmm.
So that's why I really want to do it on people that practice it a lot.
Practice. So you're trying to find the relationship between consistency and the effectiveness of practicing gratitude. Is that put together all right? Or
Yeah, that's put together, right? But
yeah,
if you zoom out, I'm just really trying to look at different people and if they can give a
yeah,
different understanding of mine. Because
yeah.
that's quite. Because you were talking about this before that people go like into subjects
Hmm.
that they want to be as a kid, but they change when they actually do the subject. I never wanted to do psychology. I never
Wow.
thought. I didn't honestly. I don't even know what psychology was that much. I never studied it before. Before I came to
Hmm.
my degree, I never studied psychology, and it's only because when I was in my A levels and a bit before then, I was really trying to understand my own mind, and I was
Hmm.
really curious about that idea. And I
Hmm.
meet loads of people. Heck, that's what gave me the idea of talking to monks because I love
Hmm.
meeting different people that have different mindsets.
Yeah.
That's why I meet like monks, ex-military fighters, and all these like the business people, like these success. Like I try to range it just to get
Yeah.
an understanding of their mind, just like trying to understand what's in their mind, how is it working, and maybe give me a better understanding of my own mind and everyone else's.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, whoever's listening in, watch out for the Wakeel podcast soon, because it seems like he's on a mission to. He's getting some pretty amazing people involved, which I think is super cool. And Wakeel, it's quite interesting because the entire purpose of this experience podcast is very similar to try and understand other people's experiences through our eyes and through their own eyes, which I think is really cool. And I think one other thing I wanted to touch on was what you mentioned on, practicing gratitude on a daily basis. I think it can be said about everything. This is a quite of a recurring theme in my mind from the past few weeks because, for those of you who know, I've started getting really spiritual from the past few years, and in my spiritual practice, they really have an emphasis on do small bits every day. But if you go to the gym, they say exactly the same thing. You go and look at exam advice, they say exactly the same thing. And there's this one mathematical. I'm quite of a maths and physics kind of person. So there's this one poster I saw, and I've made it my wallpaper. So for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, this is what the wallpaper is, and it's basically saying 1.01 raised to the power 365 is 37.8, and 0.99 power 365 is 0.03. Now, what this is trying to say is that you put in 1% extra work every day, just 1% extra, and you will be 37.8 times better by the end of the year. Whereas if you put in 1% less effort every day, you're going to be 0. So you're going to be 0.03 times better, which is technically negative. Um, so the entire idea of consistency of going to the gym and picking up weights, smaller weights, but doing it on a regular basis is a lot better than going to the gym once a month and picking up something really heavy. Now, I'm not a trained professional or anything, but it makes sense to me. And I think this can also be said about gratitude. And I just wanted to share that from the past couple of months. I have started bullet journaling as well. And every night before I go to sleep, I have this one page of gratitude. And on a single page, I'm writing one line of gratitude of what happened that day. And I'm the kind of person who likes to do a lot almost every single day. So there's always something to look back on in the day, whether even if it was something as small as talking to somebody that you haven't spoken to in a few months and just catching up with them. But it feels so refreshing and warm. Or if it was, going to watch a movie with somebody, and this is what I learned from the movie. So just being grateful for something you learned from the movie, and just small moments like these. Because anytime you feel bummed out or whatever, you can just flip back to this page and say, "Oh, actually, you know what? Life's good." You know. So, Wakil, tell us a little bit about if there was ever a time in your life where you were feeling bummed out about something, or you were feeling useless, or something like that, and you think gratitude was the thing that helped you lift yourself out of it. Is there something that ever happened like this in your life?
Well, I, I really had touched on this point before I talk about this. The way that you just said, when I feel bummed out, I read the gratitude journal. That is perfect
Hmm.
there because in psychology we talk about this all the time. when you feel a certain emotion, when you feel down, it constricts your thoughts, as in
Hmm.
it makes your thoughts narrow more, and it's hard to think of anything good because you feel that way, and you kind of like it's kind of like a cage, and it kind of closes in on certain thoughts. So the way that if you that's the great thing about gratitude and writing it down on a piece of paper and writing it down on something
Hmm.
because you wrote it down, you could always look back at it, and that thoughts are not restricted, so you can always look back at that, and it can
Yeah.
boost you up. So I really like how
Right.
you talked about that.
Well, touching on that, then, Wakil, I'll share one more thing with you and the audience. Um, Not a lot of people know what I'm about to tell you,
This is
but
top
it's nothing
classified stuff, guys.
top classified stuff. No, it's just in I think around the end of my second year at Imperial, I really started just reflecting on myself and saying the way I'm portraying myself to people, is that who I really want to be? I know this is getting a little deep, but that's the whole point. And what I started doing was, if I ever fell down, but if there was any, if there was ever a time where somebody genuinely complimented me, not either in person or even on text or whatever, I would screenshot it and I'd put it into a small folder. And it's a folder that can be accessed on my computer as well as my phone. So if I was ever feeling down, I just have an entire folder of people saying good things about me, but not in a narcissistic way, but more of a, there are times where I will feel, oh, I'm not good enough, or I can't rap well enough, or I'm not good enough to make this podcast. But there was a time where I was called to a school in India 2 years ago when I went back for holidays, and they said, "Can you just give a talk?" And I said, "Sure, okay, what on?" And they said, "Anything you want." Then I said, "Okay, I'll talk about mindset because that's literally one of my favorite things to do. I love talking about mindset and thoughts and how thoughts affect people and things like that." And there were about 150 kids in the audience there, and they all wrote this really beautiful card for me, and I just stuck it on my wall right in front of my table. But also, I got a lot of beautiful personal messages, and they were genuinely like appreciative messages. They weren't just like, "Oh yeah, you're cool," but it was like really thought through kind of stuff. Screenshot that, put it into a folder, and you don't have to show this folder to anybody. It's not a public thing. It's purely for yourself. It's anytime you feel down, you just look back and see, wow, okay, I've been able to help people, or I've been able to help myself, or there have been times where, there was something really small I did, but somebody appreciated it. I think is so powerful. I just thought I'd share that with everyone. So anybody who's listening to this, do try this out. Try your one-page gratitude thing, and also try just screenshotting it and putting it into a folder and see how you feel. Genuinely, just let us know how you feel about that. Right.
It's so funny that you talk about that because the guy that founded gratitude, not founded, but he's very influential in the field is Robert Emmons, Dr. Robert
Hmm.
Emmons. And I remember he was talking about this story about there was this little kid when he was 7. He someone wrote him a gratitude letter. It was just someone in his class. He was just his classmate was just saying how great and the kid was, how he loved his personality and everything like that. Then 20 years later, that kid still keeps that letter in his pocket
Hmm.
every single day. He never leaves that letter because that always reminds him of how valuable he is, of how he does have self worth. And he said to Robert Emmons that this is whenever I feel down or whenever I really doubt myself, because obviously there might be a trickster sometimes, and I'll read this paper. Because it really, whenever you do feel down, as I just said, like your thoughts get restricted, so you can't really think what's like a normal day. You realize, you know what, I do have value, I do have, I am worth it, I am good enough. But when you feel down, like, those thoughts that close up, like they're in the dark, you can't see them no more. So having that
Yeah,
with you is just amazing because that's always accessible.
it's always accessible. Wow, I think that's really powerful. Yeah, if there's ever an experience or a moment that made you feel genuinely made you feel really good and full of purpose, somehow if there was a way to capture that moment, and just record it, I think this is why gratitude journaling is so amazing. The whole part of the experience, you can also talk about it from a sensory point of view. We have five sense perceptions. Is that how you say it? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've got sight, we've got smell, we've got taste, we've got sound, and we've got touch. And what I found really interesting about even something as small as scent can remind you or trigger you of trigger some really interesting memories. Like, this is why I love perfume. Like, if there's ever a scent that, I go to a perfume store and I smell a certain perfume that I was wearing when I was 16, it rushed back those memories of when I was 16 years old. Isn't that so crazy? I think it's mental. So, if scent can do something like that, imagine what putting down words on a piece of paper can do. um, you know and there's also this really interesting thing. I'm not too sure about it, but I think just before you sleep you enter this thing called theta phase, or just right after you wake up you enter this thing called theta phase, where um, I think your mind, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but there's something to do with your subconscious that has more access to your brain or something like that. So if there are any ideas that come to you at the end of the night, let's say you were working on a piece of code for your engineering project and you couldn't figure out the bug, and right before you sleep you figure it out. Like, I just think it's really crazy. So I think there's definitely something right before you sleep and right after you wake up. That's why they say, when you wake up, just close your eyes, breathe, and just reflect on something that you're grateful for is a beautiful start to the day. So, Wakil, do you think, you know, all the topics that we've touched on obviously have a psychological side to them, but almost everything we said also have a very direct spiritual side to them. And, I often wonder whether the two are directly or indirectly linked. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, when you say spiritual, I what comes to my mind is like monks and people like that,
Hmm.
and I think they are really related. For example, when you talk when I look at spirituality, I don't really see it in a religious sense or
Hmm.
that sense. I usually see it as principles, like deep principles that people can extract to make their lives better. So, and I really found that the principles of spirituality really links with principles of psychology. For example, gratitude. That was there, I don't know, 10,000, 20, not 10,000, thousands of years ago. And now it's coming to rise, like gratitude journals, gratitude letters, and other things such as mindfulness. Like the person that made mindfulness was an ex-monk. Like
Hmm.
these, like spirituality, I feel really does have a link with psychology, mainly positive psychology, which is the area of how we can make our lives better, how we can make, because there's like different areas of psychology, and you have clinical, which is people that are depressed and how we can make them normal, like in not normal as in normal feeling as in neurotypical, and we
Hmm.
have positive psychology where we have neurotypical people and how can we make their lives better, because we're all chasing happiness at the end of the day, you're all chasing
Hmm.
something. That's probably
Yeah.
why you're trying to listen to this podcast. We're chasing something, and positive psychology is trying to look into how we can actually get it, because we make wrong decisions and we think we're going for happiness when we actually are not. So they're trying to
Hmm.
crack that code, and they get a lot of these principles from spirituality and these ancient wisdoms.
Wow. Yeah, I think that's really crazy because when I asked you in the beginning of this episode, I asked you what is psychology, and you said psychology is us trying to understand the mind. And I think for spiritual people or people who try and practice spirituality, as far as I can understand, they all agree with me when I say we first just trying to understand ourselves before we try and understand something bigger, or we could say that we're trying to understand ourselves and where we belong in the bigger sense, but how can we do that if we're not able to understand the little things that we do? um, so us trying to understand ourselves means we first need to understand our mind, and the very fundamental bit of that is, as mindfulness, psychology, and spirituality all say the same thing, we first try and focus on our breath, right? So why is that? So I was in the spiritual retreat a while back, a few weeks ago, and during one of the workshops somebody said, how do you control the mind? And obviously, people had some various answers. And the speaker said, by controlling your breath. I was like, okay, I knew this was coming, but what exactly? Because you hear monks speak about it. It's almost like it's an we can almost expect this to be an answer. But maybe most of us don't really understand what's going on. But the way the speaker had phrased it, she said, or he said, I don't remember which speaker it was, but they said that when we are dealing with stress and anxiety, our thoughts are racing. They're going super fast. And that is a direct manifestation. So our breath is a direct manifestation of our thoughts, because when we're under stress, our breathing is like, so we're rapid breathing, right? So how do you control that? You just breathe slower. It's as simple as that. And I find it really crazy how a lot of the problems that we have, the solutions to those problems are already within us. And I think that's really, really cool. So sometimes I think, from a psychological perspective, we are definitely looking at, I think we've come a long way, even recognizing and being open about the fact that things like depression and anxiety exist. Because when I was younger, nobody talked about these things. These words did not exist in my vocabulary. But the fact that we're being so open about it, I think, is amazing. But do you think maybe there's a missing link somewhere, or do you think there's somehow spirituality adds into psychology, and it makes this sort of a whole package that people can practice on a daily basis, or something along those lines?
Just to go deep into that, what do you mean by missing link? Can you clarify that a bit?
Yeah, so sometimes we in science, like I studied engineering, so sometimes when we're trying to describe a phenomena or we come up with models, we make a lot of assumptions. And when we're studying these and we're just trying to get by to finish the degree, we're just like, yeah, dude, whatever, just fine. I'll assume that this is true and therefore blah, 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 blah. But a lot of the times I sometimes wonder that science has gotten us really far, but I still feel it's a little bit incomplete. Maybe we as humans still need to spend a lot more time understanding models and theories and the world a little bit more before we can get science to that stage where we understand everything, like dark matter, dark energy. The quantum realm is a complete mystery to us even now, things like that. And sometimes I feel like when you enter the same problem from a spiritual perspective, you the perspective changes completely and you find an answer in a different light. So my question is there something that we haven't yet discovered in psychology, or maybe something we're yet to find, where spirituality gives the answer? And vice versa, is there something in spirituality where we're still missing something that psychology says, hang on a second, this and this and this? Is that a valid question?
It's a valid question. It's a deep
Yeah.
question as well. It's going to get everyone
Yeah.
thinking right now. Well, I think there is a quite missing link, but the way that you said it, vice versa, I think both of them need each other. As in,
Wow.
because with, for example, you said like when you look at spirituality, it gives you a different perspective. Like you're
Mm.
looking at dark matter and everything, but once you tap into your spirituality, it gives you a whole new view of it. And I feel that is needed in psychology right now because a lot of it, positive psychology, these kind of ideas and perspective about gratitude and all these kind of mindset ideas, they're really recent, so it's really lacking.
Mm.
And spirituality, I think, is needed for psychology because it gives so many of those principles of how we can make our lives better. For example, you just talked about perspective in
Mm.
psychology. I think the first lecture I ever had was how your perspective is all false. Your eyes don't really see what's out there in the world. Like this, there's a reason that visual illusions and visual tricks work, is because you don't actually see what's real.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of the idea of with spirituality. That's what spirituality talks about. That change your perspective so you can see the world that you want to see. Change it so
Mm-hmm.
that obviously it makes you happier, it makes your soul happier, and that's it's like linked together. I feel both of them need each other. And the same way, spirituality needs psychology because you were just talking about how in the talk where you did about breathing, people don't really understand what that means. Like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, they said to you, the way you can control your mind is controlling your breath. But what does that mean?
Yeah.
Whenever I heard anything like that, even with psychology, if someone tells me something like that, any subject, even with chemistry. When I was studying my A levels, if I ever heard something if I ever didn't really get why this happened, I would always ask one. The teachers would always say, "Don't ask too many questions. Like you don't need to know it." But I would want to know it because I don't like because I want to know it as deep as possible. They were talking about. I remember there was once talking about the atoms and the orbits in the neurons, and they would say in the first inner circle you can only have two electrons. And I was thinking, why is that?
Yeah.
These little things I'm always questioning why, and I think psychology can really give a deeper understanding of why these spiritual principles work. For example, with the breathing, your speaker was saying that it helps the mind stop racing, and that's really true because there was a psychologist that once said that anxiety, stress is the price we pay for being able to live in the future and past. I mean, be able to think about the future and past because most animals can't
Wow.
do that. I'm pretty sure a bird can't really think about what he's going to do in the future or what happened in the past, but we can, and that's very helpful to us because it allows us to avoid threats and everything. But it's a lot of stress and anxiety. Like we wake up in the middle of the
Really
night
is.
thinking,
Yeah.
"Where's
Yeah.
my when I'm getting my next paycheck or how I'm going to pay these bills?" So focusing on your breath is what grounds you in the present. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we just talking about that a bit more. Just being like the breath can bring you back to the present because you almost want to have both halves of it. Like being able to think about the future and past is a great thing. You can strategize and plan, but yet being able to be in the present when you want to, at any time you want to. That's what real balance is. But that's
I think that's so beautiful.
long story short. They need both in each other.
I think that's a beautiful response, Wakil, because there indeed have been times where there was something missing from the science perspective, or maybe I didn't go deep enough in the science way at the time that spirituality gave me answers for. But even during the retreat, there were certain principles in spirituality they were talking about, and I didn't understand them till until and unless they explained it from a physics perspective. And I was like, oh, that's what you mean. And even just talking about the breathing, and I think biology. I'm not a biologist, so please, I apologize if I'm slaughtering any of this statement. But they say that when you take in deep breaths and stuff like that, obviously it's more controlled and it's more conscious. But we need the lungs transport the oxygen to the blood for blood flow, and we need the blood flow because the blood needs to go to the brain to function properly. And if that doesn't happen, or if the quality is low, then you're not doing it to its full extent. Something along those lines. So I completely agree with you. So when from a spiritual perspective they say your breathing controls your mind, it literally makes sense from a science perspective as well. So I think it's really cool how, like, I love it when these things are coherent. Like, there's a moment of joy in me that says thank God or thank the universe or whatever, that these two things are literally the same thing. And yeah.
Just to add on that, we were talking about how spirituality and psychology need each other. I think everything needs each other. Just
Yeah.
to fully think of that, because as you're saying, one, not everyone understands it fully. For example, if I talk when I'm talking about psychology perspective right now and how breathing can help, some people won't understand it. They may need a physics perspective, or they may need an artistic perspective, or they may need something different. I think I don't think there's like one answer, like one all that has all the answers. Like I don't think
Yeah.
like psychology can give us everything we ever need.
Hmm.
I think we need different areas of it needed. For
Yeah.
example, I remember there's not only just because it gives us a deeper understanding, because what's the point of learning these things if people don't understand it?
Yeah.
You felt this way. Like when you watch videos, you don't understand what they're really saying. If I watch
Yeah.
some physics videos, I won't understand what they're saying. I need it in a term that I can understand. Like there's a saying that you can't take someone where you want to go if you don't go to them first. Like a taxi driver, he can't take you to the destination if he doesn't come to your house first. So if you don't
Hmm.
understand their view, they may be an artist or they may be a philosopher, or they may be something else. If you don't come to them first and understand like their world and be able to integrate that with what you know, then it's pointless.
Wow. So this actually reminds me of something. You're talking about understanding their road or their path, and to get to know them better and their perspective better. I've been watching this. So one of my friends, Rajaram, he got me hooked onto this Netflix series called Designated Survivor, and it's a really interesting series. But one of the things I was watching today in the morning, they're trying to hunt down this criminal that's trying to destroy America, obviously, as you do. Um, but they're unable to find him properly, as in they know where he is, but they're not sure what he's trying to do, etc. And so what they did was they got a psychologist to um, look at his behaviors and his patterns, and try and diagnose him somehow. And they diagnosed him as a sociopath with a narcissistic personality. And if those are your symptoms, then the root cause of it lies somewhere in your childhood. Something happened there, maybe there was a trauma, and stuff like that. And it links heavily with the point of the Experience podcast, which is learning from each other's experiences, but also understanding ourselves, um, in a way that what happened to us in the past, positive or negative, that is making us do things that we are doing today. So really trying to understand what happened to us, to recognize what we're doing today from that perspective, so that if there is something that we're doing good, we continue doing it. But if there are things that we're doing bad, we recognize it and we transcend it. We change it. We try and do to make ourselves a better person. So that, and the same thing with another Netflix series called Mindhunter. Have you watched the Mindhunter, Wakeel? No. So they look at criminals and they interview criminals as patients, which I think is really interesting because when I was 16, and I had just come to the UK, and right after I came to the UK, there were these attacks happening somewhere else in the world. And I looked at the people and I thought, who in their right mind would think that what they're doing is a good thing? Like shooting people and doing these really really bad things in the world. Do they genuinely think they're doing a good thing? And I think that's when my journey started with trying to understand people a little bit more, because what happened to you that made you want to do these things? Or what happened to the person who brainwashed you that they wanted to have so much strength and influence on you to be able to influence you to do these bad things? So I think it's really really interesting talking about certain things that might have happened to us and how they now trigger the things that we're doing right now. I feel like we understand ourselves better that way. We understand other people better. And I think in general, it's just a really nice way to improve humanity and society in general. It's just my opinion, because, if we understand why criminals are doing the things they're doing, we can stop our kids from going down that path in no matter how difficult the situation gets. And this is where mindfulness kicks in. So if there's something really bad happening to you at the moment, how can we learn from the situation, or what are we being put through to make us understand what's going on or what we need to improve on, so that we don't end up going down the wrong path? And I think this is really crazy how all of these things at the end of the day are coming together to try and make us understand ourselves. Yeah, I just thought I'd share that.
It's really interesting.
Yeah.
It's so funny because when we were talking about that, about what makes these people do what they do, like what made these criminals do these attacks and do these insane things. And it reminds me of a couple of years ago. I went to Auschwitz, the concentration camp,
Mm.
and I remember the speaker there. He was saying he took us to the grounds, and he said right there, like say about 20 feet away, like on the opposite gate, that's where the commander of this camp lived. He lived with his family, his whole kids. He lived like a normal life, but once he came into the camp, he would be like so like insane and do like these insane things to people. And the guy was just saying to what makes a person do that? Because his outside these gates, he was living this normal life. His kids go to school. These kids are having ice cream in their backyards, and they can be fine living next to a camp where people are getting who knows what is happening to them. And he was
Mm.
really talking about how we heard this. Everyone in business heard this term like you're you're made up of the five people you spend the most time with,
Yeah.
and just being he was talking about how he was like in a situation where this is just normal. The kids, the wife, everyone just thinks this is normal. Their dad's just going to this camp. He's doing the right thing because that's what everyone said is a good thing to do.
Yeah.
And it's just like how associations are just so powerful, and it just like it can either make you or break you.
Break you. Yeah. I think that is very, very true, and it's something that I've understood the importance of, especially in the past 2 years, because I've started spending more time with highly spiritual people, or at least people who are trying to head in that direction, and we sort of relate to each other a lot. And so if there's certain things that in the past that I did purely because other people around me were doing it, but I never necessarily enjoyed doing it. At the time, I would feel weird that, oh, why do I need to go to a club? But everyone else is going, so let's go. But that's just one lame example. But in general, there's so many things that subconsciously we do just because everybody else is doing it. But if you really step back and think about it, is this something I really want to do? Yes, no, make the decision and continue from there. But it's so much easier when you have people around you who are doing the same things as you want to do and you genuinely think is the right direction. So I completely agree with you because this association can have, as you said, make it or break it. And I think it's so powerful. And in spirituality is definitely something they say, Sangha, we call it in Sanskrit, and that means association or the people you spend time with really help you develop further in life. And there's also a saying that says, if you want to go fast, yeah, you know what I'm about to say. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together.
I think our
So,
friend Cherek talked about the same thing.
sorry?
You got it's Cherek told me the same thing.
Yeah, it's mad.
It's fine. But I wanted to talk about that because we're talking about associations. I know one thing when I was learning psychology, and this is something that's been on my mind recently. I thought I knew psychology. I thought I knew, like, this is what we should do. Like, we need to have good associations. We need to be grateful. We need to do these things. And then I saw people that were in like really hard times, and I was thinking, and they explained to me, how do we even do these things? Because gratitude, I love gratitude, but I don't like the word gratitude has become now. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like the connotation we have of gratitude now because I feel like it's kind of been a moral thing. Why don't you appreciate this? You should be grateful for this. You should and I talk to a lot of people and it's like they don't like the word. I remember this because I was posting on social media and everything like that. I remember there was this post and he was saying how to make your lives better, and they put in you should try to be more grateful. And that comment, everyone just so many people just commented like, what is there to be grateful for? And that's quite shocking. And I feel there needs to be a change from that. Like we need to obviously gratitude is a great thing, but I don't like the idea it's become. I've just thinking about this right now.
Yeah.
I kind of see more gratitude as how can I see my life as awesome instead of something that's a moral thing like oh you need to be grateful for this or someone gives you a present you have to be grateful. I could be like there's some people that are going through
Yeah.
some really hard stuff. It's like they're getting punched in the stomach every single day in a metaphorical stance. So if they get some little present,
Hmm.
why it doesn't make sense to be grateful. But I kind of see as gratitude as it's not something that's moral or it's not something you have to do. It's not that they give you a present, you have to be thankful to them. It's your choice to be grateful. It's like we were talking about perception. I know hopefully everyone saw this thing of this visual illusion of like the rabbit or the duck. As
Yeah.
in,
Yeah. Yeah.
you can either see it as a rabbit or you can see it as a duck. And with seeing your life as awesome, you don't, basic gratitude. You don't have to be grateful, but depends what kind of life you want to live. If you want to see your life as awesome, and there's studies on how it makes you happier and how it can really boost your life. So if you want to see it as, I think rabbits are more better. So I'll say if you want to see it as a rabbit, then see it as a rabbit. But if you want to see it as a duck, there's no moral standpoints at it. It's just what you want and whether you want to have this boost your life and make you happier, or as they say, like, it's a knife. Can it be used for good or used for bad?
You could bad, yeah. I think that's a very interesting point you've made, Wakil, because I actually remember a time in second year when I started touching on or started reading up more about gratitude and being thankful for things. And I was just sharing this idea with somebody, and at the time, that person, my friend, he was going through a lot. He was mentally just he was not doing well. So anytime I brought up any of this, like pretty much like how you said, he literally said, "There's nothing to be grateful for." Like, I don't want to be here. I do not want to study this degree. It feels like no matter how much I study, I'm never able to get the marks I want. Even if I get the marks I want, I'm never, satisfied because there's always more. Or no matter how much I work, it feels like other people are always 10 times better. So there's nothing to be grateful for. And Wakil, I'm not going to lie to you, I did not know what to say. That it was But I really liked the fact that he was being so honest about it. It's not that he was trying to, you know, roast me or prove me wrong or anything. It was a genuine concern where it almost felt like he wanted to, but has no idea how to be grateful for this. And a couple of years later now, let me know if you agree with this, Wakil, and anybody listening in, please do share your thoughts on this as well. Do you sometimes think it's possible to take it in a very step by step manner, and that change in consciousness of you trying to be consciously grateful, even if it's for something very small or something medium that's happened in your life, but the fact that you're trying to be conscious of it in itself will guide you in that right direction. Because at least for me, I think that is what happened. It was the time I made a conscious decision to shift my mindset from one thing to the other, not just in gratitude, but in a lot of different things in life. That's when I started walking down that path and saying, "Oh yeah, you know what? What's the worst thing that could happen if I did it?" So, do you think for people who are really, really going through a tough time, and as you said, are being punched in the stomach, even literally in some cases, do you think even just trying it out will help them proceed in that direction?
That's one thing I wanted to touch on as well
Hmm.
because I kind of see it as say a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
Like certain things like gratitude, it may not be the thing you need right now. It's still something that's really great and it can really boost your life. It may be, for example, with your friend. Yeah, gratitude can still really help his life and it can really boost him up. But it may not be the thing he needs right now. Maybe he needs something else because there's like we all heard of depression, right?
Yeah.
So what surprised me, I had a year ago, 2 years ago, I didn't know that there's different types of depression. That there's
Oh.
different types, and not everything's going to work for the same thing. So there's biological depression, which is where like the body actually doesn't have the energy, it doesn't have the motivation. So saying be grateful, it may help for like a bit, but it's not going to help that problem. They want to
Mm-hmm.
fix this problem, and so
Mm-hmm.
certain things like medication would help that problem, and therapy and certain stuff would help that problem. There's like other existential depression, and they don't understand what their life is about. Gratitude can help, but it won't give them the answers that they want.
Yeah.
So, and just touching that point, I think gratitude it does really help everyone, but I think everyone wants certain answers. They're not looking for like when your friend was saying that. When I was listening to this, I hear I don't want to think about how I can make my life better through gratitude. I want to hear how I can fix this certain problem I'm having right now.
Yeah.
And I find this with my videos as well. People want like their problems fixed. They're not looking really right now at how they can make their lives better. They're just trying to fix this problem because we find in ourselves as well. Like throughout your day, you're thinking about your problems. You don't really think about how I could do this better. Your mind just
Yeah.
goes on to the problems. It's fixated on the problem. It's normal. But I think gratitude is a great thing. But I think they need a certain thing that can help their problem first.
Well, I think that's really powerful what you said, Wakil, because you're right. I think it's also a matter of um, doing the right thing, but maybe it's the wrong time to do it, or something along those lines. And I think it's a good practice to create a habit out of. But Wakil, I think you're right when you say maybe at that specific moment, that's not what they need in that very moment of time. It's like when somebody comes to you and is opening up to you regarding a problem they have, and then you just don't listen to them and you just start giving them advice. That's not what they need to hear at the moment, is it? They just need to vent out. And yeah, I think it's really powerful what you said, Wakil. So what do you think is the right direction in that? Is there something generally people can do when they're feeling depressed or in anxiety? Do you think people should approach therapy if this is a more long-term problem that they've been facing and they're struggling to get out of? Obviously trying out meditating and breathing and gratitude journaling is obviously something that really helps. But if it doesn't seem to be working, what do you think people can do from a psychological perspective?
Well, I'm not an expert at this, by the way. I'm still a
Of
student.
course, yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
still learning. So take my advice like a pinch of salt.
Yeah.
But if those things are not working, I do really think therapy can really help. I
Mm-hmm.
think I don't think there's like a certain answer to everything, but therapy there's like different. I don't really like the word therapy, so I'll say having someone that's there that can help you break your patterns or help you with what you're going through. That's an expert is very
Mm,
beneficial.
yeah, I agree. I think it also ties in really well with the root of what we were talking about with psychology. It's us trying to understand the mind, and somebody helping you break down those thoughts and break down those patterns that you're having, or that you've subconsciously created, but from an unbiased perspective. Because you can talk to your friend and they'll try to say it in a comforting way, or maybe even in a way that might not even be correct in some cases, just to comfort you. But I agree that a therapist can definitely do it obviously in a professional sense, but do it in an unbiased way that can really, maybe it's a hard to swallow pill. I mean, a lot of people are uncomfortable talking about therapy, and the idea of therapy is something that I'm opening up to as well, because like I didn't know anything about therapy, but recently I've met so many people who have shared their experiences with therapy, and they've transformed into, you can tell their energy is completely different. And I think it's so interesting how therapy can do that. So for anybody, maybe this is a sign if you were waiting for it. Maybe if therapy is something that you were considering, and if you were waiting for a sign, this is the sign. Try and talk to somebody if you need to, because in the moment you may be feeling like it's a vulnerability or it's something that you really don't want to face, but you don't want it to drag you in life. You don't want it to be there when you want to do something bigger in life or just enjoy the little moments. So, yeah, if this was if you were waiting for a sign, please do consider this as one.
If
But
I can
yeah,
just add on to that, like if anyone is considering therapy, I would say go for it. But again, I don't like just don't think of it as therapy. I really hate that word because it had
yeah,
so much of negative connotation again.
mm,
Think of it as you just talk to an expert of someone that understands the mind. Because a lot of times you're talking to people like they give you we all want advice, we all want help with our problems, right? And sometimes we go to people that really don't know what to talk about. They have your
mm,
best interests at heart, but
mm.
they don't have the expertise. They don't have the knowledge. So don't think it as there's something wrong with me. This is more of just like I'm actually going to someone that's an expert this time. Because like I get frustrated myself when someone tells me something like just be grateful, and I'm thinking that's not my problem. I'm asking how do I fix this problem?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. It's really interesting because even from a currently we're talking about it from a psychology perspective, but even in one of the workshops in the meditation workshop, the speaker he said, you'll hear a lot of spiritual people say, "Oh, meditate and everything will be okay," but he's a spiritual person, but he's also a therapist, and he said, "Trust me, if there are other things that are wrong in your life, meditation is not just going to fix it. So you first need to heal
Just so
yourself."
brutal and honest right there.
Sorry.
I said he was just so brutally honest right there.
I think that was the best part, because he's not going to sugarcoat or anything. He literally said, if there are other things wrong in your life, meditation is not going to fix it. You need to, be conscious of your thoughts. You need to heal yourself. And then when you start meditating, the meditation is going to be so much more beautiful. And I found that really, really nice because it's not something that most people will just say out loud. So hats off to him. If you know who you are, so if you are listening to this, we're very grateful that you said it that day. But yeah, any final remarks, Wakeel?
Um, my final remarks would be if you're talking about remarks, I'll probably I always thought of this second. If I'm ever on a podcast, what would I say to someone? And the thing I would say to them is one, try to understand your mind more. Like if you're going through your life and try to understand how your mind works, because that is like your command center. It really can control how you feel throughout the day. It can really control basically your whole life. Like no matter what happens, the mind is a very powerful thing and it can make the best out of the worst situations. So working on that is really great. And also, you're doing awesome where you are. Like everyone that's listening right now, like just you listen to this podcast, it's awesome that you actually took time out of the day just to listen to this podcast, that you're actually learning and doing all these awesome things. So hats off to you.
Thank you so much, Wakeel. I think, yeah, I agree with you. Even just taking out the time to listen to something like this, whether you're watching it on YouTube or listening to it on Spotify, Google, or Apple, is definitely a sign that you're looking for something deeper and you know definitely, yeah. I think I'm just repeating what Wakil is saying at this point, but yeah.
Yeah, but just think about it. How amazing is it that you're actually spending time not watching entertainment, not hopefully this is entertaining. Like Tej is always entertaining to me. So you're just actually trying to learn more. So that it's a really awesome thing and you're awesome.
Yeah. So Wakil, are you happy if people want to approach you on TikTok,
Yes.
um, or any other social media, and they want to ask you any questions or things like that?
Yeah, I'm happy. I'm always a well-being scientist on Instagram and TikTok. I'm not really on any other social platforms. It's probably better
Yeah.
to message me on Instagram because TikTok has this weird messaging system.
Okay, so keep an eye out for that, guys. Please do follow him on Instagram and TikTok at Wellbeing Scientist. Genuinely, the content that he shares, I really like it, and it's something definitely that there have definitely been times where I just think about it for the rest of the day. It's good food for thought as well. Thank you so much for tuning in, everybody. We really hope you learned something new. Before we end, let's take another moment to reflect on the word gratitude. After this, think about what changed between your feelings before and after the episode. This podcast was created so we can listen to all our stories and learn from each other because there's so much that we all experience in our individual journeys. Being able to have even a small glimpse of someone's journey can add so much perspective to our lives, help us grow together, and be able to better understand ourselves and each other. Despite all our differences, there's so much more that we have in common. This is a listener-supported podcast, so any level of Patreon subscription or one-time donation will be accepted with a lot of gratitude and used back to making this podcast experience even greater. The different subscriptions can be found on my Patreon page, which will be linked in the description. This was recorded during COVID times with little to no professional equipment, so the quality may sometimes vary. We apologize for this inconvenience, but despite that, we hope you were able to connect with the message of this episode. Once again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope to see you next week. Take care.